We must address the growing concern regarding that beacon. It clearly violates our community's architectural harmony. This tower needs to remain active.
Not according to these papers.
You're putting everyone at risk.
I inherited the Hilltop property from my father, including the old aviation beacon that had guided aircraft for years. I never imagined the HOA would decide that the tower was ruining someone's view. The beacon looked industrial, but it wasn't abandoned or decorative. It was a functioning aviation safety installation. I had maintenance records, property documents, and years of proof that it belonged on my land. Linda told me the tower was blocking the premium mountain view enjoyed by the HOA residents. I told her the beacon had existed long before her neighborhood and wasn't going anywhere. She insisted the HOA had authority over anything visible from the neighborhood. I reminded her that an HOA rule couldn't simply erase property rights or aviation requirements. That night, I pulled every document I had. The record showed something Linda clearly hadn't bothered to check. The beacon was tied to a long-standing aviation safety agreement. The beacon wasn't just mine. It served a documented purpose for aircraft approaching the nearby regional airport. If someone removed it without authorization, the consequences could reach far beyond our neighborhood argument. A few days later, contractors appeared on the hill with equipment. I had no idea they were about to turn an HOA complaint into a serious aviation problem. I drove up and found a demolition crew standing beside my beacon. Linda was there too, acting as if the HOA paperwork gave them permission to tear it down. I called a licensed surveyor before the situation could go any further. The boundary check confirmed what my deed already showed. The beacon stood completely inside my parcel. The surveyor marked the exact property line and explained the result to Linda. Her expression changed when she realized the HOA's construction plan had crossed into private property. Linda finally realized she couldn't legally order the tower removed herself. But instead of stopping, she claimed the beacon was still a nuisance to the community. While the HOA argued over the view, someone at the regional airport noticed something unusual. The Hilltop beacon had suddenly disappeared from their operational status system. The airport contacted its maintenance team to investigate the outage. They weren't calling about an HOA dispute. They were asking why a known aviation beacon had gone dark. Before the airport could reach the hill, the HOA contractors had already begun preparing the tower for removal. I immediately documented everything and contacted the appropriate authorities. An aviation inspector and county officials arrived to examine the site. For the first time, Linda seemed to understand that this was much bigger than an HOA disagreement. The inspector confirmed that the beacon was part of a recognized aviation safety arrangement. He also confirmed that the HOA had no authority to dismantle it simply because residents disliked the view. The inspector explained that the beacon's absence could affect visibility and navigation procedures for aircraft in the area. Then he asked me one question: "Who authorized this?" I handed over the deed, survey, maintenance records, and every communication I had saved. The documents told the story more clearly than any argument could. Soon, airport representatives arrived personally. They weren't there to argue with me. They wanted to understand exactly how the beacon had been taken offline. The airport team showed everyone the beacon's role in the surrounding approach area. The room for excuses disappeared almost instantly. Linda finally understood that the view problem had never justified disabling an aviation safety installation. Her entire argument had collapsed in front of the people who actually operated the airport. The beacon was inspected and restored under proper supervision. I stood there watching the warning light come back on, knowing the situation had finally been handled correctly. That evening, the beacon was shining again across the valley. The same tower Linda had called an eyesore was once again doing exactly what was built to do. The HOA board was forced to review everything that had happened. The question was no longer how to improve the view. It was how their own decision had gone so badly wrong. Weeks later, everything had settled down. The beacon remained exactly where it belonged, safely maintained on my property. Linda eventually had to admit that the beacon wasn't the enemy. The real mistake was assuming an HOA vote could override facts, property records, and aviation requirements. I never wanted a fight with the HOA. I simply wanted them to respect my property and leave a working safety system to professionals responsible for it. The beacon still shines every night, reminding me that sometimes the smallest looking structure can serve the biggest purpose. If you enjoyed this HOA story, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from.